When discouragement feels like death, Jesus spoke these two Aramaic words, 12 years old. She had stopped breathing, and the mourners were already inside the house. Jesus walked in, looked at the noise, and removed every single person from the room. Then he bent down, took her hand and spoke two words in Aramaic that no one present had heard used that way before. Those two words were Talitha Kum, and they were not a prayer, not a miracle formula, not a priestly ritual. They were the most intimate thing Jesus ever said. On record, a direct, personal, Aramaic command spoken to a life that the whole world had already decided was finished. If you have ever felt that something inside you has gone quiet, that a version of yourself stopped breathing, long before your body did, this word was preserved 2,000 years for exactly this moment. She had been dead for hours. The mourners had already filled the house. The professional weeping had already begun. That ancient tradition of hired grief that announced to the whole neighborhood that a body was inside and hope was finished. Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, had come to Jesus in the street, falling at his feet in front of everyone, begging him to come to his daughter. She was 12 years old. She was dying. And while they were still walking toward his house, a messenger arrived with the worst 4 words in any language: "She is already dead." Jesus did not change his pace. He did not turn around. He said one sentence to Jairus: "Do not be afraid. Only believe." And then he kept walking. When they arrived, the house was already chaos. The mourners were loud, theatrical, certain in their grief. Jesus walked inside and said something that made them laugh at him. "The child is not dead, she is sleeping." They mocked him openly, these professional witnesses to death. He put them all outside. He took the father, the mother, and 3 disciples into the room where the girl lay. Then he did something no one present was prepared for. He reached down and took her hand. That gesture alone carries an entire world of meaning. Death in the Jewish tradition of that era was considered ritually uncontaminating. A body must not be touched. Jesus touched her deliberately, personally, without hesitation. He did not pray to the ceiling. He did not perform a ceremony. He bent down to a 12-year-old girl who had stopped breathing, took her hand like a father waking a child from sleep, and he spoke to her directly. 2 words, in Aramaic, the language of his breath, his prayer, his most intimate address to the divine, Talitha Kum. In Aramaic, Talitha is a tender word, the kind a parent uses for a small child. It means little lamb. It is not a command of power. It is a call of love. Kum means arise or rise up. Together, Talitha Kum translates with devastating simplicity as little lamb. Get up, not be healed, not return from the dead, not a theological declaration or a priestly formula, a personal, intimate, specific invitation, spoken directly into the ear of a girl the world had already given up on. She stood up immediately, and Jesus told them to give her something to eat. Approximately equals. If these Gnostic teachings are awakening a desire for inner transformation within you, we prepared Deus Guides, the sacred words, where this journey begins. The link is pinned in the comments. Mark 5:41 preserves the Aramaic exactly because the early witnesses could not bring themselves to translate it. You do not translate a moment like that. You record it exactly as it was spoken, so that something of the original sound, the original breath, the original frequency survives every century of transmission. The scholars who compiled the Gospel of Mark were Greek writers recording Aramaic events, and when they reached this moment, they stopped translating. They wrote Talitha Kum in the original language, and then added the Greek explanation beside it, as if they understood that the words themselves carried something the translation could not hold. That instinct was correct. Jesus did not speak Greek. He spoke the language of his mother, his prayers, his most direct access to the Father he called Abun. When he spoke Talitha Kum, he was not using religious language. He was speaking the way you speak to someone you love, who has stopped believing in themselves, quietly, directly, by name, calling them back from the edge of something that felt permanent. The girl was dead, but something in the Aramaic frequency of those words reached past the boundary that everyone else had accepted as final. That is not metaphor. That is the record. Discouragement is a kind of death. It does not stop your heartbeat, but it stops the part of you that believes your life is still moving, still alive, still capable of change. You know this feeling. It is the morning you wake up and the weight of everything you have tried and lost settles onto your chest before you even open your eyes. It is the point where you stop making plans because planning feels like a cruelty you can no longer afford to perform on yourself. Discouragement is not weakness. It is the accumulated weight of disappointment on a soul that was made for something more than it has been allowed to live. The mourners in that room had already decided the story was finished. They were loud, certain, and completely wrong. They laughed at Jesus because they had accepted the conclusion before he arrived. Discouragement works exactly this way. It fills the inner room with noise, weak evidence, with entirely reasonable arguments for why nothing will change. And Jesus walked in, removed every one of those voices, closed the door on the certainty of loss, and spoke directly to the part of the girl that still existed beneath the silence. When you are in the room of your own discouragement, the mourners are loud, but they are not the final authority. Get ready. In the next video, I will reveal more sacred Aramaic words that unlock deeper spiritual understanding. Turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Talitha Kum is your word now. Not a historical relic, a living Aramaic frequency that was preserved exactly because it carries something that translation cannot contain. When Jesus spoke these words, he was not performing for an audience. He was issuing an intimate, specific, personal command to a life that had gone quiet. You can use this word the same way, not as magic, not as formula, but as the language of return. Aramaic words carry layered, multi-dimensional meaning. Talitha Kum does not just mean get up. It means you are not finished, you are not forgotten, you are still a living thing that has somewhere still to go. Begin in silence. Place one hand on your own chest, over your heartbeat. Breathe slowly until the noise of the inner mourners quiets enough for you to hear yourself. Then speak Talitha Kum aloud. Not loudly, the same way Jesus spoke it, with intimacy and precision, directly to the part of you that stopped believing. Speak it to the dream that went quiet. Speak it to the version of yourself that gave up on the relationship, the calling, the healing, the future you stopped allowing yourself to want. Discouragement has a frequency. Talitha Kum has a different one, and when you speak it with intention, with breath, with the full meaning of Little Lamb, get up. Something in you hears it. Visit Divine Light Academy, my site dedicated to bridging ancient spirituality and modern living. There you will find my advanced guides and a deep journey into Aramaic, the living language of the masters, designed to help you access states of deep resonance, clarity, and personal revelation. The link is pinned in the comments. She was 12 years old. The mourners were certain. Jesus was not. He took her hand, spoke two Aramaic words, and the story the room had decided was over began again. That is what Talitha Kum does. It does not argue with the evidence of discouragement. It does not explain why things will be different. It reaches past the noise, past the certainty of loss, past the conclusions that felt permanent, and it calls the sleeping life directly back. You are not a finished story. The mourners in your inner room are wrong about you the same way they were wrong about her. Jesus did not come into that house to debate the mourners. He came to speak to the girl. And the word he chose was not a word of power or judgment. It was a word of love, spoken in the most intimate language he knew, directly to a life the world had given up on. Talitha Kum, little lamb, get up. That command was spoken once in history, but it was preserved for you right now. Before you close this video, come to the comments and tell us, what did you feel? What shifted? We read every single response. And if this teaching found you today, subscribe to this channel. Every week, we go deeper into the ancient frequency codes that were always meant to be yours.